aliens are highly evolved spiritual beings. I wanted to do a segment on this. I think that this stuff is really important to kind of lay out. Listen, I'm not deceived. I know what was going on with the beings. There was no deception on my behalf because I experienced it, and then I modeled that experience in my everyday world. That's how my story goes. So first, importantly, of all, Harry Reid has a really good quote here. Of all the information that I have, which is quite a bit, I think there is no indication whatsoever that they are harmful, whatever is operating the UFOs. Kind of scary, to be honest with you, but there's no indication of there being a reason to be afraid of them. But I think they're big time scary. So you get these, again, it's the kind of classic, we don't understand them, but they are benevolent by nature. So I kind of like look back on our own world to kind of understand this, right? I don't know if a lot of people know this, but animals are basically through and through, they're sentient. We have a lot of research on it now. After 2,500 studies, it's time to declare animal sentience proven. So there's a lot, and we continue to get more. There was just one recently, 65 animals that we know now laugh. So have laughter. Elephants, cows, turkeys have laughter that can actually display behaviors that they laugh. But think about how humans treat this stuff. Think about what we're doing in the world, right? The definition of sentient is simply able to perceive or feel things. Today, most of us would probably say that animals are able to feel emotion, form attachments, and have distinct personalities. Yet for many decades, the idea of animals feeling emotions or having personalities was dismissed by behavioral scientists. This view arose from the 17th century philosopher René Descartes, asserting that animals are without feelings, physical or emotional. I've actually, shat on René Descartes on this before, because I think the Age of Enlightenment really was this beginning of us having a philosophical change that, if you look back at what the mind frame was, it really is the cause of the destruction going on now, that we kind of removed ourselves in many ways from a holistic perspective. And the Age of Enlightenment really, really did that in the 1600s. But, animals are sentient. So we have this kind of information now, but think about what we're doing, right? We don't, we're polluting the oceans, right? Those are people. Those are alive beings. We're either capturing them, or we're tearing down their forests. Whatever we're doing, we're impacting them and calling us the kind of bosses. And we're murdering them, right? In droves. We're murdering animals, and they're sentient. And so imagine how that looks to aliens, right? To other species. We're just murdering, and we don't have anything. We don't fully care, but we do care. The individual cares, but as a collective, we kind of just out of control about it all. And but here's the problem. We think we know they're sentient, but where's the whales' baseball games? Where are the elephants watching TV? Where are the dolphins' plays? Where's their jobs? Why they don't act like they're sentient, therefore we don't treat them like they're sentient. But the idea is that life does not look the way we think it does. We have a paradigm problem. So we're stuck in this kind of mind frame that we don't act or treat animals as sentient, as being alive and conscious. And if we did, we couldn't act the way that we're doing so right now. And so that's kind of a big deal, animal sentience. And it leans into the way we need to kind of embrace understanding about aliens in general, is that life does not interact or look the way you think it does. It interacts much differently, and we need to be out of our paradigm to kind of understand that. So we know what biological evolution looks like. We're very clear on that. We have records of our own, and we can see the bones, and so we know what biological evolution looks like. We can see what technological evolution looks like, right? We have records of all this stuff, but we really have trouble seeing what consciousness evolution looks like. Humans, I'm a history advocate, and I have all these past life awareness as part of my story. I've talked about this before. And I really kind of get dismayed sometimes by historians when they kind of assume behaviors when we just we really do place our mind frame and think everyone else should think like us or does think like us. And so we really have trouble seeing how consciousness evolves, and we don't have a good record of it, and we have trouble with this stuff. So I want to kind of put out there, at least to help with the mind frame of the Greys, imagine a species that focused on extrasensory experiences. Imagine we had a charismatic leader, a charismatic president one day saying, I had, remote viewing, I believe it, psychic abilities are real. Everyone should be doing this and focusing on this. And all of a sudden it becomes a trend. And I mean a trend to the degree that schools finally accept it and teach the children, and we move there, and then we evolve for hundreds of thousands of years. This type of evolution that just is a scale going in a direction with something that we don't touch yet, which is psychic abilities. Imagine that with a species that opened themselves up to past lives, study them, which we're starting to do now. We're the human race. We have researchers studying past lives, confirming that they are real, that people do have memories of things that they could not have had memories about. And the details are sometimes huge. They're immaculate, and you cannot, with a shadow of a doubt it. So imagine a species took that for real. All of a sudden they're teaching their children that, the society agrees with this, and then they evolve for hundreds of thousands of years, and they make it their job to beat the death and life, the birth and death life cycle. And then same with the ghost realm. The ghosts are real. We have pretty good evidence for those who want to look at it, who treat it seriously. Ghosts are real, and the ghost realm is real, and people can communicate with the afterlife. And there's good evidence for this stuff now, that you can do these things. So imagine a species, again, who took all that stuff seriously and then evolved for hundreds of thousands of years. Now, I don't know that the Greys actually were physical beings first that evolved in this way. I don't know that, but I'm just trying to give reference for ourselves, that we need to kind of crack ourselves out of the box. So this is my whole shtick about gray aliens are highly evolved spiritual beings. I have the experience of the White Room. For those who know it, it's in my first contact event, and I go to the White Room, and I become an orb, and I experience it with them. They do it with me, and they put me into this heightened state. And it matches because they replicate it on me in December of 1997. So they give it to me in 1993, and then they replicate it in 1997. And it is through and through the experience of the Kundalini rising. This is their natural state. This is what's telling, is that they live in this higher state. And for me, I was blown away. It would be equivalent of bliss, of a type of high unity God experience, and just this insanity of a high. I can't listen. I have the regression recorded in the video, and you can see me bawling and crying. At least the audio is me being completely insanely in bliss. And this is the state of these beings. They aren't laughing and going insane about it because it's their natural state. So they are in this kind of higher state naturally. And I don't know the details, but I'm not convinced they spread out their energy to live in their physical bodies, that they actually are in that orb state in the body, because I know that they're invertebrates. And so ours seems to spread out in the spine. And then we have the lower energies and the higher energies, and then the chakra, like all these kind of energies spread out in the body. And I don't know that they do that. I don't know that they actually have an energy spread out the same way the humans do, but they definitely continue to rely on this White Room. And so they're very regularly focused on this kind of high energy state. So that being said, because I had the experience in the White Room, I know that they are unrepressed souls. So listen, human souls are repressed. As we live in our bodies, we struggle with our souls. We struggle. This is part of the human existence. This is why there are so many books on spirituality, is because humans struggle with it. If there wasn't a struggle with it, one system would make all the sense. But because we do struggle with it, you have, hundreds of systems, whether they're New Age or religions or all the variations of religions. They all spring out because there's so many variations, because humans struggle with consciousness. We struggle with spirit. These guys don't do that. They have no struggle whatsoever. They're living in a state of unrepressed soul. So they're experiencing whatever they experience. They don't have the same issues that we have. And yet humans, because we're repressed, we therefore we kind of project outwards the problems that we have of not being able to connect to our consciousness. And we project them out and we try to get our outside world to fulfill those problems. The Greys don't do this. These beings do not do this stuff. They do not have this problem because they get that fulfillment in, at least in the state that in the room that I was in, they have that state naturally. So they're living in a sense of fulfillment. And yeah, humans do not live in a sense of fulfillment. The only humans I've ever met who live in a sense of fulfillment are the beings who I met, or like my guru, who are enlightened beings. They live in a state of fulfillment and a completed state. And the Greys live in that state. Absolute freedom. So the room, I was a ball, I was out of my body, I was zooming around, had this complete and absolute freedom, but I'm in unity with this God presence thing, with this vibration, with this higher intelligence that was unity with me. So that unity creates a sense of freedom. It creates a sense of reliance. So the white room is a connection with God. It was whatever people think it was. And what it means to have a connection with God is absolute freedom, where nothing is hidden. And an interdependency with a godlike presence creates a reliance that generates a feeling of ultimate freedom. This is what happens when you vision. So when you create a vision from your consciousness, and then you want the universe to project, to hope it goes that way, and it does, then it creates this sense, that feeling of that connection. Remember in my travels, in my story, I have this where I visioned the money and I got it. And then I was on the edge of freezing to death in Newfoundland and I got a house to live in. And these are the experiences of that reliance. And when you're in that space, it is an absolute sense of freedom. That white room does that to them automatically. So they're in that state of this absolute reliance and sense of freedom, and they're in it with a high fulfillment, high energy consciousness state. They also, it created for me a childlike purity, which I will always feel in them. They have this kind of like purity vibration to them. It's this purity, this childlikeness to them. Doesn't Jesus, Jesus wasn't a Christian. Jesus was a master, and he said you have to be like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, kingdom of heaven is the absolute, right? A dimensional space that we all have access to. They didn't have words for it that time, so they called it the kingdom of heaven. But it is, you do have to be like a child. You have to have that kind of vulnerability, and these guys have that. They have that in this state. It's a childlike vulnerability, a vulnerability that humans shy away from. And that's where higher consciousness is. And that, the masters of our planet do understand this stuff. They understand that childlike vibration is that purity is natural consciousness. The beings live in that state. And that again is higher vibration. The Federation were all childlike vulnerability. The mantid, the humanoids, all had this kind of innocence and childlikeness to them, this vulnerability and innocence to them. And then on top of it, they were intelligent, and then they had this kind of stature about themselves. But they had a purity that humans really struggle with creating. Their bodies are not in a state of agitation, right? We drink coffee, I drink coffee, but we do constantly to excite our bodies. And it's a Buddhist concept to not do that, and it's a Vedic concept to not do that, to not rely on these kind of agitations. And they do not have these states of agitation. Their bodies, as far as I'm aware, their bodies do not do this to them, and they live in this kind of fulfilled state of consciousness. Lastly, they're highly sensitive. So these are things that humans can get to that high state where you're into telepathy and you're able to work with time and space by, with psychic abilities, but it requires a sensitivity and kind of a listening, a subtle listening on the inner world of your inner consciousness. And the beings are already there. And there's these type of rooms, the white room creates these spaces for them. So they have a stature. So okay, you have this evolution going on hundreds of thousands of years that is of a way that humans cannot conceive. Lastly, they're in this higher state that only is replicated by the enlightened people of our planet. And then on top of it, they're highly intelligent about everything. So they have this maturity about it all. And so they have a stature of consciousness that is intimidating to be around. And so when people are terrified of aliens, or when they have terror of gray aliens, and I confirmed this with other experiencers, the fear you feel from a gray alien is that the stature of consciousness is higher, and it feels intimidating to be around. Because it's vulnerable. It's a vulnerability, and they automatically get you into a state of vulnerability. And if you're not comfortable with it, it will terrify you. And you have to be comfortable with that type of vulnerability. And but they are kind and gentle about it. That being said, what I notice is that they aren't when there's an ego involved. So I notice everything all around the ego. So if someone thinks they're a hot shot, the beings seem to really antagonize them. What's really funny is that my guru would do this. And Jesus did this. Jesus flipped the tables at the synagogue, right? When there's ego involved, they antagonize that ego to break it, because they break minds. Remember, I talked about the paradigm. So they really try to break minds. And this is what I see with the military. I see the UFOs antagonizing the military. I see them doing these things on purpose. Skinwalker Ranch, George Knapp said that the entity that was in Skinwalker Ranch would follow the A-type personalities home. So if they were like these, you'd get these snipers there, these military men, and they were involved because there was government contracts. They would leave, and the A-type personalities would get the paranormal effects following them home, trying to break minds of the ego. So that's what I see. If you don't have an ego, then the beings were always gentle and kind. And though you may have an idiocy or your own problems, I can be an idiot sometimes, the beings were always very forgiving and very okay, especially if you can accept those fallacies of yourself. But they, and they are extremely highly intelligent. So the feeling of this vulnerability, child self, highly evolved consciousness, stature of consciousness, they feel like they feel just huge. If you were to just image the feeling of them, I feel tiny and they feel massive. And I've had those images when I was in communication with them once. And they're very aware of that stuff, actually. So we have the potential to be highly evolved spiritual beings. This is not to praise. I mean, we can praise them, but we aren't to worship them. Don't worship gray aliens. You need to worship yourself. You need to worship consciousness. You need to worship God. Don't worship gray aliens. And listen, I had 26 contact events, and they never told me to worship them or anything like that. That this is all. The problem is if you aren't believing you are on a higher level, then you will think you have to worship them. They never told me this. They never said to do that. Everything was about putting me on the higher level. So I was on equal footing with them. And one of the feelings of the White Room was putting myself on equal footing with them. We have to learn how to do this because they're coming. So first, let's talk about God, because I use the word God because I have no religious upbringing. I've talked with someone here about that, and it's kind of comical. And yeah, I know there's religious upbringing in many people. So if I talk about God, you can say the unified field in your mind. I don't have anything. My parents were not religious, and I have no problem having the non-morality, one unified conscious field that is aware of me. By the way, this isn't it's the one unified conscious field that is aware of you. God is real, and you are God. So you have to get this in your head. God is real. You are God. You are God. You have to get this in your head. You are God. You're a part of the structure of the universe. So what is God? Don't think mechanically. God is a right brain experience. So if we treat it mechanically, we're taking it on as a left brain experience, but it's actually a mythology. We need to kind of come to it with a childlike place of godhood, like this. Let the child part exist about it, that it is interacting with you. It does care about you. The universe just speaks differently than you do, and it thinks differently than you do. And the universe is alive, but not the way you expect it to be. Again, there's that paradigm shift problem going on here, where we think animals should be one way and they aren't. We think great aliens who are enlightened should be one way, but they're not. And why would they be enlightened if they're doing biological programs, right? All this kind of stuff that people can think. And the same with God, right? If God is real, he would stop all the tornadoes, right? All these ideas people have in their head about what they think this stuff is all about. But anyway, we'll go into here. Don't forget, we don't understand the nature of reality. We really do think that we understand the nature of reality, but to kind of make my point here.
We stand here.
Sorry. Some scientists believe the universe is conscious. We're moving towards this. And we are gods because we are creating reality. So we're taking that God power with the power that is available to us in the universe, and we are raising ourselves into it. So don't forget, we don't understand the nature of reality yet. Everyone is telling you that you're going to understand the nature of reality with your mind, but that is not true. The nature of reality is outside your mind, and therefore the nature of consciousness is also outside of your mind. God is a masterpiece of no time and no space, while simultaneously in all time and all space. The Vedics called it the absolute, as in absolute time and space. It is unlimited, omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. If God is real, then everything around you is alive. You are God. It is leaf to tree, wave of the ocean to the ocean, spark of the flame to the flame. We have all the same potential and power as the creator. We are godlets. You live in no time and no space. That is what psychic abilities are. The way to come to psychic experiences, this is my personal opinion. I see a lot of people saying, practicing these psychic abilities, and it's great. It's totally great. And it does open you to those ideas and those concepts. But I find if you come to source first, if you come to the core of what you are, which is this God self, then you will open up to those abilities naturally. They will become part of the reality of what you are. If you're just going into, telepathic abilities without exploring what you are, then you have the potential to be ungrounded about it. And I'm really big on grounded spirituality. I don't really like ungrounded spirituality. So I really recommend people focus on source as a way of grounding self, and then moving into these abilities, which are all natural in every single one of us. You are a creator. So you're creating with your thoughts and your feelings. Your thoughts and feelings are creations, and they do impact the world around us. I just showed you an article there that shows that. Your experience of God is your being. Let me get this little thing here. Your experience of God is your being and feeling, the being state, your being. So whatever you're being right now, that is you. That's your God part. That's the God part of you coming in. And so whatever that being state is, that's what you are right now. And your being and feeling is your God experience inside you. And the energy, that is the feeling of experience of energy and heart. It is the experience of unity, the feeling oneness with the universe. So again, I have a lot to say because, listen, the beings gave me the white room. I had this crazy enlightenment type weird thing in December of 1997. I couldn't understand it and all the time traveling. Then I had a guru, and this is why the beings chose me, because they knew this is the entire plan. They knew this is where to go, and they are like this. So they knew I would couple this stuff together. So, and what I see in the spiritual world, people are kind of imploring about spirituality, exploring it. I'm seeing some people miss them things, and I really want to kind of emphasize it. So bhakti. Bhakti means devotion, to worship. Now we have villainized this word, worship. We think it means to cow down. Oh, please, God, no, I worship you. Right? Fear the wrath of God, I guess is the biblical term there. This is all garbage. So here's the reality. So first we have to know sacredness and sanctity and reverence and worship. They are not what you think they mean. If you think it means to cow down, worship is loving. So you worship your phone, because we all love our cell phones. We worship our phone, and we worship the things that we love, right? So when we worship, we bring that thing closer to us, and then we become the thing that we love. Get it? So we need to worship, but we've kind of vilified worship. We've vilified these things. We think it means losing power. And I don't experience that. I don't experience it's about losing power. It's about bringing that thing to me and finding it inside myself. So, and that's the case, right? What doesn't matter what you love. You love, You can think of something that you love. Maybe you love macaroni and cheese. And if you love macaroni and cheese, you will bring it closer to yourself. And then you will identify as a person who loves macaroni and cheese, right? It really does kind of merge with your identity. And that's what love does. And that's what worship is. It's knowing your, so the whole point here about bhakti is knowing your consciousness, its consciousness, your God, its God. So the beings gave me an afterlife vision in the White Room, and I saw the death of my last life, and then the arch going into the birth of this life, and so they showed me in that vision their interactions with me. But I learned so much about what I saw there in that kind of arch, the afterlife vision. So my last life died, and it was going into this. So it was in this, I guess, this astral realm, I guess, or this ghost realm, whatever it is. And it was moving up, and then it hit a veil, the purposeful veil of the afterlife, and it goes through, and it becomes something different. And then the truth is that I can observe that as a 16-year-old, but then I don't understand it. But then it becomes the intuitive reality that gets expressed throughout the contact events, throughout building up to the rising, this kind of genetic thing they would do, and then it gets experienced, and then I try to maintain it. I guess you could say that's the reality, right? You can have these epiphanies, you can have these realities, but then the challenge is maintaining this stuff, and that's what this really all seemed to all be about. And my guru, in the end, helps me maintain this stuff, helps me maintain these higher things. So I had this awareness, and I can talk about it in reference to this. So this here is your higher self. These here are all the bodies, all the manifestations. Technically, this is you. So you're one of these. Let's say you're here, and you've had all these past yous, past versions of yous, different dynamics, different setups. Maybe you were a male and you're a female now. Maybe you were vice versa. Maybe your wife was your mother. Maybe your boss was your brother. So you have all these kind of flips and dynamics, and you're growing love because you're all part of unity. The higher self is not these. These are offshoots of the higher self, but these are not the higher self. I sometimes think people confuse spirituality with all this, but this is not what this is the ethereal self that's growing, but this is the real guy. This is your higher self. He's the one volunteering the lives. So you are not the higher self. You are not the higher self. You are a product of the higher self, but you are not the higher self. So the identity you have of you is not the identity of that. That's what I'm trying to distinguish. The higher self is a larger and grander identity. It is the one volunteering you to live out in space and time. When you worship God, so let's say you find a way to connect with God, whatever that is. So it's the one unified field. You find a way to connect with that identity. The practice practice being God. You try to bring, again, so that you're missing out if you aren't thinking that you're God. It's just about worshiping God, but not putting yourself on that level. You'll never touch this guy. I can't say you'll never touch it, but you're convoluting the process, which is to bring this guy into the body, you want to bring this into the ethereal self. So worshiping is love. So loving the part of you that is God is what you end up doing, because this guy is the identity of you as God. This whole guy, the higher self, is the God self. It is the you that is in God's self. It is the no space, no time self. And yet it's so incomprehensible for your brain to understand that. So you are not that, but it is a higher part of you, and you're trying to bring it down. So when you embody being God, you begin to embody the higher self. You bring in the identity of this higher self. You become that which you worship. But okay, I want you to focus on the distinction here, the problem here. This higher self is in no space and no time. But this guy is in space and time. It's using space and time. So you're creating offshoots. Your higher self, out of joy, is creating offshoots, using space and time to develop a body that it continues to use. So it's continuing to think of it as the gels or cocoon. It can continue using this cocoon, keeps developing this cocoon, keeps developing this cocoon, and keeps using time. It's using time to develop self, to develop itself, and to keep growing and expanding its consciousness. And in the end of the day, it wants to be embodied in that consciousness, in that in that ethereal self. So the ethereal self, though, is built from past tendencies. So you know how, some of us who have past life awareness, you have tendencies of that past life and you're living them out now. I can relate to that. And I assume some of you can relate to that there's past life tendencies you're continuing to live out. But this guy has nothing to do with past tendencies. It is all about the present moment, living in the unlimited space of now, in the no time and no space of now. This guy is all about past tendencies and the build up and the collection and build up. So consciousness, I see a lot of people talk about consciousness. And so I get to put my kind of weight here. Consciousness is not your mind. Your mind comes from consciousness, but consciousness is not your mind. Consciousness is beyond the mind. Do you see consciousness? Oops, I shouldn't have done that. But consciousness, this guy, that's what consciousness is. That guy who's not our identity. It's a higher version of yourself that is connected to something much larger that is very incomprehensible for the mind. And so that's what the origin of consciousness is right there. Yet we do think that we keep talking like consciousness is the mind, and it's not. Consciousness is beyond the mind. So my line is, we are a heart with a mind, not a mind with a heart. It's kind of again, paradigm shift. We have to reorientate our paradigms. We have to change and break our minds. We are a heart with a mind, not a mind with a heart. Which is why we need a regular practice that exercises removing our mind. This is what I do. I've been part of, when I was with my guru, the first thing he did was say, meditate twice a day. I've been meditating for 20 years. I don't mean I've been like meditating on and off. I don't mean like I've been picking a Thursday to meditate. I'm talking twice a day, morning and night, every morning, every night, meditate. And it's the exercise of removing your mind. And you can get good at it. You can listen to consciousness. So the truth is that you need to do this, because you can't read a book on how to swim, right? You can't read about consciousness in a book. You're not going to experience consciousness if you're reading about it in a book. You need to learn how to experience it. Just like, as I mentioned earlier, that you need to learn how to experience that you live forever. It may be challenging to do that, but we can't just read about it. We have to learn. We have to feel it. We have to embody it. We have to embody our higher self that knows it lives forever. Unfortunately, the Morpheus here. Yeah. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to experience it for yourself. So we're just going to break this down for a little bit here. We need to understand what the mind is, and we need to understand what consciousness is. The mind gets its information from the senses, from the world of the physical. It is a computer, a repository of past information. The mind is a constructor of reality. It does its own job building a reality, but it is a fake reality. I'm not trying to be hard, or I'm not. We just have to be vigilant, is what I really mean to say there. We need the mind. We do. We're in a world that uses the mind, so we do need the mind. It helps us to live out our day with our knowledge, right? To cook, to drive, to do our jobs, we use the brain to do this in our mind. But we are not our minds. Qualities of the mind are fear, right? Judgment. So it's taking information only from the senses, trying to predict the future, but uses the past as a reference. Right? So it's a computer, is what it is. And therefore it fears, because it's quickly trying to discern and jumps to conclusions really quickly. And judgment, it judges, right? Oh, this is going to happen, or that person did this for that reason. And they kind of quick to think about things. Living from the past, that's what our brains are all doing. We have all our habits and all our tendencies are all from the past. Fear of the future. The mind is a constructor of reality, it does its own job building reality, but it's a fake world. Your mind doesn't know things like infinity. It doesn't know what love is. It doesn't know what unlimited is. Your mind doesn't know what unconditional love is. And your mind doesn't know what eternity is. These all arrive from being. Being. Our experience of timelessness is in being. When we experience the absolute, our consciousness. This is because our being is in all time, all space, while simultaneously being in no time and no space. It is the absolute time, absolute space. So we have access in our being to no time and no space. And this is our God self. This is God. But we have multiple psychological components we need to bring in, which is the identity. We need to identify with that thing, that God self, that is the world around us simultaneously. So the values that represent true consciousness, unlimited potential, the feel of complete freedom. Remember, I talked about the white room and the visioning. We need to experience this. And this is the big struggle, right? Brains really don't want to believe in unlimited potential. The brains really don't experience this. We're like, no, no, no. I'm pretty certain I'm limited and I can't do things and I have no actual potential. But if you were truly attached to consciousness, if you truly are part of the universe, which they're saying you are, and you can experience this, then you would experience complete freedom. You'd be able to live in a space. And I'm telling you, I've done this myself, and it's very, very real. You can live in complete freedom, in the experience of complete freedom. Unconditional love is also an aspect of true consciousness. The kind of the volunteering, the social work hard, caring and loving for people, looking at homeless people and wondering, how can we help? You know, I have this, I'm not perfect. I don't do enough. I don't do volunteering and I don't do enough stuff. And I feel those ways. And I conund about how to do more. But forgiveness too, right? Like, we need to forgive, man. We need to make forgiveness kind of the forefront, because if we don't, we're holding on to our brain and the past information. And the way I don't do that is by forgiving a lot. I forgive those around me, and I just forgive and forget, kind of, as they say, right? So your brain isn't holding on, living into the past, right? Undisturbed by events in space and time and causation. So you're trying to find a place where you can say, listen, I live here. This is self. This is who I am. I am this consciousness inside, and you're unperturbed by the events going on around you. Those are high, maybe, aspirations, and you can achieve them. They are achievable. I tell you that they are, because I've been able to do those things myself. And here's the thing I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to be a hot shot myself. The challenges is to maintain these things. Is you get there and it's kind of a roller coaster, and you kind of work with your mind and with yourself, but to make these your life, aspirations are a good idea. That's what I would kind of lean towards. Consciousness is the only world that is real. So we're talking about the mind making a fake reality. The only reality that is real is consciousness. So here is an exercise to help us go beyond the mind. So this is a Sanskrit word, prajnanam brahma. So that's the phonetic below here, prajnanam brahma. Pra is before, gya is like jnana yoga, which is knowledge. Nam is name. So before the formation, it relates before form. So it is before naming, before form. So that it's consciousness. It's the space of the absolute. So you're saying consciousness is God. Consciousness is the creator. So prajnanam brahma, prajnanam. So I want everyone, keep yourself muted. I appreciate that, but I'm going to ask you to follow along with me so we can kind of get this down. Okay. So say pra, say gya, say nam, brahm, ha, prajnanam brahma. So I'll give you one example of how I do it. Breathe in from the nose, into the belly, and then I say, Prajnanam Brahma. And now you can do it along with me, and I'll do 3, okay? So we do breathe into the nose and into the belly, and then exhale saying, Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam Brahma. So I hope that felt good. So that's a meditation. Please go and do that. You can do that driving the car. Prajnanam Brahma. I used to do it at work. Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam Brahma. And what do you feel, right? What do you feel? That's consciousness. That's your spirit. That's the guy, that's the identity of the one who builds you, the lives. And you're bringing that down and you're bringing it in. So the takeaways. become spiritual. Maybe most of you are here, I don't know. But my argument is that the beings don't have any of this kind of the tactfulness. You know how we kind of have this, new ageism, and people are kind of like grossed out by things. And the beings, it's a dimensional thing for them. And this is the realm they're in. This is not a philosophy. This is not there's nothing here that equates to philosophy. This is reality, and it's just the stepping stone. It's just kindergarten. These guys are PhDs. They're so high advanced in what their world is, and we will understand this stuff when we become spiritual. We focus on what our spirit actually is. So God is real. I am a God guy. I love God. And I focus on embodying that God self in myself. Find out what God is for you, find God. Treat the universe as alive. The universe is alive. All the animals are sentient and they all have consciousness. And the world around you is alive. We don't treat the world around us as alive, but the world around us is alive. And today you got spoken to symbolically by God, by the universe. Did you know that? Right? Every day is an interaction with love. Did you know that? And we all got spoken to some degree by the universe. You live forever. You need to know this. At some point, you'll know whether it's in your body or not. But you do need to know this because you are a forever living being. Bhakti, do not cower down. This is like the number one error I see in everyone in all spirituality. You need to know love the thing, love God, because you are God. Therefore, you're loving yourself. You're putting yourself on the higher level. Worship, it's devotion, it's sacredness. It's not cowing down, please God, fear of God, the wrath of God. It's not this stuff. It's worship is love. Love is bringing up. I have no experience in me of God being cowing down and being angry. This is humans projecting is what that is. Humans can't understand these things. And so they create ideas and they project their own garbage and they say it's cowing down, but it's not. It's out of your paradigm. That's the problem, right? It's out of your paradigm. I hope I've made it pretty clear that humans are stuck in a paradigm. And if we get out of it, we can raise ourselves up and we can understand what the beings are kind of trying to present to us. You have to practice spirituality because the mind doesn't have a tendency for it, right? The mind is all built on the past concepts. So it's built on past. So we actually need to break out of our paradigm. We need to do something outside of the paradigm. You can't break the paradigm in the paradigm. You need to break the paradigm outside of ideas of the paradigm. So you do that by focusing on consciousness and focusing on an activity like meditation, or, I gave you a mantra, I gave you an example, something with which that help you break out of that paradigm.